2 years later, a seasoned ex-commando named Vane and his loyal hound arrive at a heavily fortified border checkpoint, trying to head back into the occupied zone. The guards spend several minutes intensely scrutinizing his passport, but finding no reason to hold him, they finally let him pass. The next morning, Vane arrives at the charred ruins of his old family estate, the exact place where his wife and child were brutally taken from him during the conflict. As he looks around, the painful memories come rushing back. He sifts through the rubble and unearths a pristine photograph of his family, breaking down in tears. Meanwhile, deep in a military stockade, a ruthless enemy commander named Kovac is released from solitary confinement. A superior officer highlights the bloody history of Kovac's elite unit, noting that they systematically burned down entire civilian villages, including Vane's home. It turns out, this horrific atrocity was exactly what triggered Vane to go on a legendary rampage, single-handedly eliminating over 300 enemy soldiers and earning him the terrifying mythic title, the Wraith. Knowing the legend has crossed back into their territory, the High Command promises Kovac a massive fortune if he hunts Vane down. Minutes later, Vane sidetracks into the wilderness, but the pursuers easily track his heavy tire treads and surround the truck. Vane fires out the window at one of the bikers, but the rider's heavy ballistic helmet completely deflects the bullets. The biker shoots back, grazing Vane's cheek. The intense pain causes Vane to momentarily lose control, sending the truck swerving violently off-road before he wrenches it back onto the tarmac. Suddenly, Vane notices one of the bikes is riding empty. It turns out, the rider has leaped onto the back of the truck and is crawling across the salvaged timber. Hearing footsteps on the roof, Vane ducks just as bullets punch through the ceiling. He slams on the brakes, sending the assassin flying over the hood, but the man manages to save himself by clinging desperately to the front grille. The attacker finds a heavy tow chain with a hook and smashes the windshield, but Vane swerves into a violent drift, throwing the man completely under the churning wheels. The remaining bikers swarm the vehicle. To counter them, Vane rams his truck into an abandoned roadside car, crushing a biker against it and triggering a massive explosion. Suddenly, another thug leaps through the side window and viciously grapples with Vane, leaving him dangling precariously out of the moving cabin door. A third biker pulls up close to execute him, but Vane swiftly disarms him, grabs a live grenade from his cabin attacker's tactical belt, and jams it directly into the motorcycle's wheel spokes. The bike instantly detonates. Reaching back inside, Vane snatches the shattered tow chain from the hood, wraps it around the driver's neck, and hurls him out of the cabin. Vane takes back the wheel and engages the motorized winch switch. The steel cable violently retracts, dragging the thug up the hood until his head hits the front grille, instantly decapitating him. With no bikers left, Kovac roars up from behind and hurls a Molotov cocktail onto the flatbed, setting Vane's precious timber on fire. Furious, Vane detaches the dead attacker's explosive vest and hurls the body directly into Kovac's path, forcing Kovac to dive out of his vehicle a split second before it vaporizes. Vane plows his truck through a thicket of wet pine trees to smother the flames. He stalls the overheating engine, pours his remaining drinking water over the radiator, and calmly uses a blade to dig the bullet fragment out of his own cheek. Suddenly, the roar of twin tactical fighter jets echoes from the sky. Vane grabs his hound, guns the engine, and drives off the road to evade the incoming strafing runs. He seeks temporary shelter inside an abandoned timber barn. The jets circle back and fire heavy autocannons, tearing up the roof, before looping high into the air to drop heavy bombs. Vane hits the gas, bursting through the back wall just as the barn explodes. He has cleverly covered the back of his truck with massive fragments of reinforced barn wood, which successfully absorb the bullets when the planes dive bomb him again. As one jet flies low along the tree line to line up a killing shot, Vane abruptly locks his brakes. The jet, unable to compensate, clips the heavy truck bed, shears its wing off, and plows into the forest floor in a massive explosion. 5:20. The bridge collapse. Vane drives to the edge of a massive cliffside where the second jet suddenly reappears. The pilot opens fire, but quickly runs completely out of ammunition. In a desperate move, The pilot points the nose of the plane directly at Vane's truck and ejects. Vane shoots the retaining straps of his cargo, causing the massive barn timbers to slide forward and create a perfect ramp. The runaway jet hits the ramp, launches completely over the truck, and explodes in the ravine. The pilot parachutes down and tries to shoot Vane with a sidearm, but misses every shot and runs dry. Just as Vane closes in on him, the pilot smiles. A third jet has arrived and launched an artillery strike. The massive shockwave completely vaporizes the pilot and blasts Vane's truck off the cliff, sending it plunging deep into the freezing lake below. Inside the underwater cabin, a small air pocket keeps Vane and his hound alive. Vane forces the door open, pushing his dog to the surface to save it. He looks back at his family photograph floating away into the dark depths before losing consciousness. Fortunately, his body resurfaces alongside a piece of floating timber, and his loyal dog paddles over to wake him up. Nearby, enemy search boats scan the area, informing Kovac that they found the truck, but no body or wood. Meanwhile, Vane constructs a makeshift raft out of the salvaged timber and safely reaches the shore. Dragging himself through a muddy graveyard of wartime debris, Vane discovers a massive prize, an abandoned, functional armored tank packed with surplus explosives. Back at the main border station, Kovac is waiting with a massive garrison of troops. Suddenly, the stolen tank rumbles out of the tree line, coughing thick black smoke, its hull stacked with the remaining salvaged timber. Vane has lit a massive internal fuse. The garrison opens fire, but standard rifles ping uselessly off the heavy armor plating. To force maximum speed, Vane siphons raw fuel directly into the intake engine. Just as the tank is about to hit the border barricade, the internal charges detonate, launching the armored hull completely over the barrier into the free zone. The tank crashes heavily, breaking into pieces. Vane is severely injured and barely conscious. Knowing the enemy will cross lines to capture him, he uses his remaining strength to destroy the identification on the wood with his blade, sends his hound safely into the deep forest, and collapses. Kovac crosses the borderline, knocking Vane out cold with a brutal kick to the head. The agonizing pain without making a single sound. The dripping blood from the bunk wakes up the soldier below. Vane quickly rolls under a nearby bed, keeping silent even when his hand accidentally triggers a heavy metal mousetrap. Suddenly, the structural beams of the top bunk snap, and the dead body crashes onto the sleeping soldier below, waking up the entire carriage. Vane sprints to the exit, retrieves his pickaxe, and jams it into the handles to lock the doors behind him. The next car is packed with guards on duty, so Vane climbs onto the roof of the train. Unfortunately, he gets blindsided by a low-hanging water tower pipe, crashing straight through the skylight and landing directly into the center of the guard car. The men raise their weapons, but Vane uses the heavy steel pipe as a rotating shield, deflecting the incoming bullets back into the shooters. He piles up the fallen bodies to act as a makeshift barricade, patiently waiting out their ammunition before leaping out and systematically clearing the rest of the room. Hearing the chaos, Kovac decides to cut his losses. He enters the dining car, cold-bloodedly slashes an officer's neck, guns down the rest of the high command, and steals the suitcase full of war chest money. He then decouples the rear cars, leaving Vane stranded on a separate platform. But Vane smiles, because right next to him on the platform is a massive, rail-mounted prototype ballistic missile. Vane overrides the manual ignition. The rocket boosters fire up, incinerating the pursuing soldiers in the backblast, and Vane rides the steel missile as it roars down the tracks, slamming directly into Kovac's escaping command train. Vane crashes through the shattered door, tackling Kovac into a brutal, visceral brawl. They shatter tables, tear down heavy drapes, and trade skull-fracturing blows. Kovac temporarily gains the upper hand, pinning Vane inside the train kitchen and forcing his head into a boiling sink as they stab at each other blindly with forks. Kovac delivers a devastating blow with a heavy iron tool, launching Vane out of the shattered bay door back onto the decoupled missile platform. Kovac stands over the edge, holding the money, and smiles. Any last words? Vane doesn't speak. Instead, he spits out a heavy steel locking bolt he had secretly bitten off the missile's launch cradle while pinned down, and slams the manual emergency brake. The abrupt halt causes the unanchored, live missile behind Kovac to slide violently forward on its rails. The pointed nose cone drives directly through Kovac's skull, carrying him down the tracks a split second before the entire fuel depot explodes in a massive fireball. At the Free Territory border post, two peaceful sentries look up as a strange sound echoes down the road. Through the morning mist walks Vane. He is battered, bloodied, and limping, but he is pulling a heavy wooden cart laden with the pristine, salvaged timber of his ancestral home. He shows the guards his worn, scorched passport. They look at his face, recognize the legend, and silently step aside, raising the gate. Months later, deep in a peaceful, sunlit forest, Vane is hammering the final wooden beams of a brand new home. His hound suddenly lets out a sharp bark. Vane reaches for his rifle as a group of local woodsmen approaches through the trees. But they haven't come to fight. They carry toolboxes, lumber, and supplies. They have come to help the legend rebuild. Vane lowers his weapon, a tear finally cutting through the dust on his face, as he accepts their hands in peace.